Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. What hair are you talking about? Today's episode is all about something many of us might be struggling with as we get older: hair loss. Whether it's a receding hairline, thinning patches, or just noticing the strands in the shower, hair loss can take a toll on how we feel about ourselves. But the good news, there are more effective, science-backed solutions than ever before. So joining me today is one of the most trusted names in the field of hair restoration, Dr. Alan Bauman. We're going to talk about how hair loss happens as we age, what really works to treat it, and how modern medicine is helping men and women over 50 feel and look their best again. So if you've ever looked in the mirror and said, gosh, I wish I had that fuller, more youthful look, well, this conversation is for you. So let's dive in. Did you know that our struggle with weight doesn't start with the food on your plate or get fixed in the gym? 80% of our weight struggle is mental. That's right. The key to unlocking long-term weight release and management begins in your mind. Hi there, I'm Rita Black. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, weight loss expert, best-selling author, and the creator of the Shift Weight Mastery process. And not only have I helped thousands of people over the past 20 years achieve long-term weight mastery, I am also a former weight struggler, carb addict, and binge eater. And after 2 decades of failed diets and fad weight loss programs, I lost 40 pounds with the help of hypnosis. Not only did I release all that weight, I have kept it off for 25 years. Enter the Thin Thinking podcast, where you too will learn how to remove the mental roadblocks that keep you struggling. I'll give you the thin thinking tools, skills, and insights to help you develop the mindset you need, not only to achieve your ideal weight, but to stay there long term and live your best life. Sound good? Let's get started. Welcome, friends. Come on in and welcome to our fabulous month of May. May be fabulous for you. So I am about to dive into my interview with Dr. Bauman, but I have a favor to ask of you. Before I dive in, I'm going to ask you to share our podcast with a friend or leave a review. I love bringing you all our content that helps you on your weight mastery journey, and reviews really help other people find us and our wonderful Thin Thinking community to grow. So please, just take a moment and go to your podcast platform. It just takes a few seconds and review us or share it with a friend. It would mean the world to me. Thank you. And now let's get on with the episode. Dr. Bauman is an acclaimed board-certified hair restoration physician with over 28 years of experience in the medical field. He is the founder and CEO of Bauman Medical, an international leading treatment center in the field of hair restoration, with a particular focus on the androgenetic alopecia or hereditary male and female pattern hair loss. Bit of a mouthful there. Dr. Bauman has established himself as an authority in the industry. Well, welcome to the Thin Thinking podcast, Dr. Bauman. It's nice to have you here.
It's great to be with you, Rita. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm excited about talking about hair. I was all nervous I was like, is he going to be looking at my hair?
Well, of course I am, but that's okay. That's my job.
Well, you can give me the notes after our call. Okay. So,
Rita, your hair looks thick and beautiful today.
Oh,
it looks
thank
amazing.
you. Well, I work very hard at faking it. So thank you. I'm glad my efforts paid off. For us ladies above the age of 55, we may have noticed with shock and horror, the thinning hairline, the shedding, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just going to hop right in and say, why does that happen to us, especially above the wonderful age of 55?
Sure, sure. Well, yes, and as you mentioned, it can happen to the hairline. You can see a decrease in ponytail volume. Sometimes you see more shedding. Sometimes it's a change in just the texture or the color of your hair. And this happens certainly with age more frequently. As we go along in life, we have more hair problems, much like many of our other organ systems. They tend to fail over time. But how quickly your hair kind of degrades, so to speak, is hereditary. And so if you
Mm.
know that there's someone in your family, mom's side or dad's side, and it could be a male or female in your close bloodline who has some severe hair issues, then you're more likely to have them too. And so there are some
Mhm.
pretty strong genetic components. But the hair follicle is an amazing organ. It can be affected by so many different things, lifestyle factors, and so forth. And I'm sure we're going to get into all of that. So it's not just your genetics that plays a role, but there's other things too.
Okay. So I'm curious about that, the genetics. Is there a lineage, like is your if your mother was balding versus your father, like, or could both genetic sides, they say, oh, if your mother or if your father was bald and you're a guy, you're gonna be bald. Like what's the story behind that?
Right. So the story, your mother's father, tells the whole balding process, and that's just not the case. I mean, we know that there
Okay.
are hundreds and hundreds of different SNPs or genes, if you will, that are basically relayed down to us through our DNA, and it's related to not just the hair loss or hair thinning problem, but also the color, the curl, the texture, and all of those things make a big difference. The density as well make a big difference in terms of how quickly you're going to see hair loss occur and how your hair is going to be affected by different factors in your life over time, how resilient it's going to be, actually. So it's not an easy answer. One of the things that we sometimes do when patients come in for evaluations, obviously, we're getting a deep history of hair loss in the family and their medical
Right.
situations and their lifestyle factors. But we may do genetic testing to look at
Mm.
certain metabolic pathways that not only influence, let's say, nutrition, because there's nutritionals, meaning there's nutrigenomics. Those are things that you may be experiencing that are related, in terms of how you absorb nutrients and fuel related to your metabolism, but certainly things that are related to your hair, like enzyme pathways that create excess hormones and so forth that might be detrimental to your hair growth over time.
Wow. Gosh, it sounds so complicated. Are there medical conditions or medications that would be impacting that? So like talking about like impacting enzymes or nutritionals, like if I was taking a medication or um, you know, any of
Well,
those
sure.
factors.
Sure. Well, absolutely. In your medical history, if you came into Bauman Medical, for example, we want to take a list of all of the medications that you've taken either in the past or also in the future. So even folks, let's say, who took Accutane as a child or as a young adult for acne, tend to have a higher incidence of hair loss and hair problems as they go along into the future. But certainly, as you know, medications for cancer, chemotherapy knocks your hair right out, right? It knocks out the most highly metabolic cell populations in your body. Obviously, you're hoping that's the cancer, but it could also be your bone marrow, it could be your hair follicles, it could be your gut lining. And that kind of explains why so many different of those side effects occur with chemotherapy. Now, when you take the chemotherapy away, sometimes the hair follicles rebound. Many times they do, I should say, but sometimes they don't. And there are medications that are out there. Taxotere is the one that comes to mind that was kind of a surprise to most, that caused some permanent chemotherapy, post chemotherapy alopecia, which alopecia meaning hair loss, right? But
Right.
the more common medications that you see out there in women of childbearing age, birth control can sometimes wreak havoc on their hair. You can also see medications such as blood pressure medications, mood modulators, statin medications, and of course, weight loss drugs, which I know we're going to get into.
We're going to
But
talk about that.
yeah, but there's like just general categories that just seem to, be not so good for hair quality, texture, curl, and volume, and can really start to
Yes.
shut down hair follicles over time.
Those damn hair follicles are really sensitive, aren't they?
So yeah, it's sensitive, you said, right? And so it's very true. And so actually there, we say, like, in men, we know exactly the hormonal influence of the effect of the hormones on the hair follicle. And in women's hair follicles just seem to be much more sensitive, which maybe potentially is the reason why hair is so valued, right? Because if everything is on point, all 12 cylinders are popping at once, your hair follicles are doing great. But if there's like one chink in the armor, one drop in the chain, one link in the chain, then all of a sudden the hair kind of degrades. And so hair is a very, very important sign of youth and vitality, and that's why it's so valuable. I mean, you know what a good hair day is like. I mean, we
Yeah.
all do. I mean, I want to have
Yeah.
a great hair day. So, we fight
Yeah.
we fight like hell to keep our hair looking good.
We do. We do. And especially you were talking about like you're in Florida and I'm in LA. I mean, LA, yeah, everybody's here. It's got to be amazing. So I gotcha. Now, is there a medical condition, like anything that just pops to mind that would also impact hair loss? I mean, you mentioned cancer and the cancer drugs, but like, is there any other sort of thing that our listeners might be cued
Well,
into?
absolutely. I mean, sometimes subtle changes to your hair can happen with hormone abnormalities, and that would also include thyroid, in addition to what goes on during a perimenopause and menopause. And so, as hormones change, so do your hair follicles. But there are autoimmune conditions which
Hmm.
can trigger hair loss on the scalp. For example, basically, alopecia areata is an autoimmune condition that affects the hair follicles. The follicle loses its immune privilege, which means it gets attacked, and you get these circular patches of hair loss, usually on your scalp. For men, it can happen on the scalp or beard. And the good news is that oftentimes these are temporary, meaning that with a little bit of treatment or even sometimes not much treatment, they tend to get better. Other times it gets severe, and you can get these massive patches, which can create total loss on the scalp, and even autoimmune conditions like universalis, which causes hair loss on your total body. And
Wow.
there are FDA approved medications now that basically knock out that immune response and can protect and restore and regrow your hair if that's the problem. But remember, the majority of hair loss is really androgenetic alopecia. That's male and female pattern hair loss, which is something that happens more subtly. And so I guess we should make sure we just make that
Yeah,
distinction for
does
women.
that happen during menopause or like when you talk about that?
So androgenetic alopecia can happen actually anytime after puberty, although it is a little bit
Oh,
more
wow.
commonly revealed after childbirth and then also during the shifts in menopause. And And so what happens is that unlike male pattern hair loss, which is extremely visible from across the room, you see the receding hairline, balding spot in the crown. For women, it's more of a diffuse loss in that frontal 1/3 of the scalp to begin with. And sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't even affect the hairline, meaning the hairline is about the same. And it's just this diffuse loss within that frontal 1/3, a loss of density and quality and caliber, and the hairs get miniaturized and weakened over time. Eventually, it can lead to a receding hairline. Um, and that we can see that in a lot of patients that, for example, use testosterone replacement after menopause, along with their other hormone optimization regimens. That sometimes, if they're truly androgen sensitive, which is hereditary male and female pattern hair loss, a little bit of testosterone can knock that hairline way back. And that's
Oh,
not so good.
interesting. Because I have heard that testosterone for women can actually help with hair. That's not true.
Well, it'll grow hair just about everywhere else, but not on your head.
All right. We don't want that. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Um,
In fact, like
what?
when women have androgen sensitivity in the years of childbearing age, like for example, PCOS conditions, polycystic ovarian syndrome,
Right,
they often have hirsutism, which is unwanted hair. It could be on the face or the chin,
right.
sideburn areas, and that's associated with acne and weight gain and hair loss, and that whole symptoms, the whole simultaneous constellation of symptoms, which sometimes seems more inflammatory than anything else, is an androgen sensitivity problem,
Got
and
it.
can really, really cause a lot of hair loss problems.
Well, how about just like stress and emotional well-being? Like, is that a big one too?
It's huge. And I will tell you that stress affects just about every single organ system in the body. And of course, our stress response is a survival mechanism. You know,
Hmm.
you're in the Serengeti and there's a saber-toothed tiger coming after you. The stress, the adrenaline is going to help you get away, hopefully
Right.
climb the tree or whatever. You're driving down the 405 highway, freeway, and someone cuts you off. It's not exactly a life-threatening condition, but that stress happens also. So if you're in Southern
I,
California,
I
spending a lot
appreciate
of
the
time on the
reference to 405.
right. It's so, but perceived stress can happen anywhere. It can happen at home. It can happen at work. It can disrupt your sleep, and
Right.
all of these things are and actually cortisol, right, which is what we're talking about. The release of cortisol is that stress hormone, is a survival mechanism. But too much, too often, and without a break from the cortisol really creates a lot of havoc in the body, and certainly the hair follicle. In fact, you squeeze a little cortisol into the petri dish where you got some hair follicles that you're testing in the lab. It's the first thing. It's the quickest way to shut it down. So,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
so
So is that
it's.
go ahead.
I was going to say it's just in like folklore that you have like a stressful situation and your hair falls out, right? But we do know that that is, if you undergo a severe either physiologic stress or psychologic stress, you can often experience a severe shed, which is called a telogen effluvium. That's a synchronized shedding of hair.
And that will eventually grow back, but it at the moment isn't very pleasant to see with everything coming out in the shower or what have you.
Right. So most of the time, yes, it does stabilize and regrow. But other times, depending on when it happens and how severe, sometimes it reveals this underlying tendency that you may have had but did not know about towards
Mm.
female pattern hair loss, for example. So, for example, I have women that come in after childbirth and they may say, oh, you know what? My first child, I shed a bunch and it regrew and I was fine. But my second one, I had the baby and I shed like crazy and it's never been the same since. So they say that a lot.
Mm.
So that's something I commonly hear. So what's going on there? Well, it turns out that that particular patient has some risk of hereditary hair loss in the family, and that excessive shed at the time of the second baby really exacerbated or revealed that underlying tendency towards female loss. And so what we do is we take some measurements. We measure the areas that are the most permanent, like in the back and the sides of the scalp. We look at hair density and hair caliber. And then we compare that to the crown, which is where the swirl is. And then we compare that to the front or the temple areas. And as we see those decreases as we go towards the front, we know that that confirms some degree of female androgenetic alopecia or female pattern hair loss. And many times we can get it to rebound, with therapies and treatments, things sometimes you can do at home. And other times we need to take more aggressive action in the office. But it is very, very common. And again, it can happen around the time of childbirth. It can happen around perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, as those hormones shift. That's when you're going to start to see it. We saw it during the pandemic. People locked down, locked
Oh,
out, depressed, freaked out, and our ashwagandha products flew off the shelves, and that's a stress adaptogen, by the way, to
oh,
help
right.
mitigate
Wow.
the stress cortisol. But many of those got better. And then, of course, with COVID being an infection with fever associated with it, that can trigger this telogen effluvium. And then, of course, the vaccinations and all the havoc that those things cause. We saw a lot of shedding in and around the time of vaccinations as your immune system kind of goes wonky for a bit of time.
Wow. Fascinating. All right, so now let's shift a little bit and talk about nutrition because we're all nutrition aware at the Thin Thinking podcast. How
Mm-hmm.
does nutrition, how does that role, play out in hair and hair health and hair
Yeah.
loss?
So you're born with about 150,000 hair follicles on your scalp, and that should be a healthy, good head of hair. And it does vary in various ethnic groups. So
Okay.
Asian, African descent, you're going to have less dense hair, but thicker quality or thicker caliber, curlier hair,
Oh,
coarser hair.
interesting.
Eastern European, you typically have thinner quality hair, but higher density. So the Mother Nature kind of makes up for that. But the point is that every follicle, which is about 2 to 4 millimeters in length on your scalp, usually around 4 if it's in a growing phase, is going to contain about 80 to 100,000 cells, about two dozen different types of cells, and it's one of the most highly metabolic cell populations. That means it's rapidly metabolizing, duplicating itself to create this beautiful dried keratin fiber that we call the hair. Just like your fingernail, it's dead tissue, right? But it's really important to understand that because it uses so much energy to do that, it's rapidly dividing. If you have some interruption in nutrient and fuel, for example, a caloric restriction, and that could be from a dietary restraint. It could be from an illness. It could be from a number of different things. It could be a medication like a GLP-1 agonist. If you are restricting yourself, or if you're protein restricted, especially, you're not going to grow hair. And your body's smart. It's going to start triaging nutrients and fuel to the core, mission critical organs. And unfortunately, your hair is kind of like the luxury item of the body. So, it's the last to get the nutrients and fuel if there's a deficit.
Do you see then like vegans and vegetarians who might be more carb heavy, less protein heavy, having more issues? Like
I,
this,
I,
like
yeah, absolutely. I see it every single day.
the,
Now, I have nothing against,
of
choices
course,
that people make, vegan,
plant-based
vegetarian.
diets and stuff.
That's
Mhm.
fine. I'm all for it. But here's the thing. If you're going that route, you have to increase your protein intake. And
Mhm.
what I've seen is that some folks who really, desperately want to be vegan and plant-based, or vegetarian, they just simply cannot metabolize enough plant protein to make hair in good quality.
Right.
And even if you're slightly deficient in protein absorption, your hair is going to suffer and lose its aesthetic value. Like, you may still have hair, but that hair is going to be much weaker. It's going to be more
Mhm.
prone to breakage. The cuticle of the hair, which is this beautiful protective armor coating that surrounds every single hair fiber, almost like a row of scales on a fish. That's how it lays
Mm.
down from tip to tail. Um, what's
Wow.
going to happen is that cuticle becomes more fragile, and then your hair becomes more porous and more prone to breakage. So, if you're wet combing it, for example, it may snap. Or if you're trying to style it with heat or with chemicals, or you want to color it a little bit differently, you don't like the gray. All of these things are wear and tear on the fiber of the hair. And that's important, because if you break the fiber or you damage the fiber, you can't self repair that. It's like, I don't know if you know what Bondo is, when you bust a car
Yeah.
door,
Yeah.
and you put Bondo over it and then repaint it. It looks okay, but it's not the same like steel. It's Bondo is like
Right.
soft, like clay. If you tap it, it'll
Yeah.
break. So you've got to be careful. There's no way to repair the hair. You have to grow a new one. So you have to like be gentle with your hair.
Well, what are your top foods you would recommend for a strong, resilient head of hair?
Oh yeah, so protein intake is really good. Obviously, lean red meat. Now, if you're not that kind of person, then maybe you need to get some fish, and so salmon. And then there's nuts and other legumes, and you want to make sure leafy greens for iron and things such as that. So
Mhm.
there's actually a whole list on the website at Bauman Medical,
Oh,
like
cool.
food for hair. Like what you should be eating. And to be honest, it's pretty. It's not esoteric. It's really pretty simple actually. It's a variety of things that kind of touch all different points in terms of not only producing good protein, keratin, fibered hair, but also moisturizing it, meaning your body's producing enough sebum and natural oil. So omega 3s
Mm.
and things like that are really important as well for hair production and keeping your hair looking good.
Yeah.
But we do have, for example, we have a B vitamin complex, which as we call it, the A list, which is just the group of all the vitamins that you want to invite to the party. And then the hero, which is biotin. And, biotin got a lot of flack recently. About 10 years ago, they said that it disrupted some laboratory testing. Quest put out this alert and the FDA carried the torch. But most of the labs have figured that out. So biotin is not going to interrupt your thyroid testing, but check with your lab. If you're on a good high dose biotin, it can help your hair, and it's very safe. And it can also make your nails grow thicker better too. So
Well, that's
we have our own collagen peptide protein mixture. It's got a triple collagen in there. Obviously, that's not going to be vegan or vegetarian, but bovine collagen. There's several different types of collagen that we put in there, and one of them specifically is for hair, and the other one's for joints and
mm,
skin. But there are some really good ingredients in that, and we call that the builder. So there's kind of a whole wellness system that I've created over time. I mentioned quickly ashwagandha. That was our stress adaptogen for people who are super stressed out.
right.
Um, Even probiotics that can help out with hair growth. So there's some things that you can do nutritionally for sure, whether you search those things out in natural format or you supplement with nutritionals if you feel like, you may not be getting everything that you're needing.
So you would recommend collagen. So that would probably be a question on people's minds, is like, is this collagen that I'm buying and consuming really doing anything?
Yeah.
And your answer would be yes for the
Well,
hair.
absolutely. Because what we do is we measure. And so how do we know? People say, oh, well, I'm going to come home and stand on my, I'm going to do my yoga pose upside down every night and see if that helps out with my hair. And I go, wow, that circulation improvement sounds great. But why don't we measure your hair and see if that's actually working? And I don't know if that's working, by the way. I don't endorse upside down yoga poses for hair growth. But my point is that no matter what you're doing, whether it's the TikTok trend of rosemary oil or something more sophisticated like a low-level laser therapy device or regenerative treatment in the office with platelet-rich plasma or exosome therapy or peptides, or proteins and things like that directly through the skin, whatever you are doing, or more traditional medications like minoxidil, for example.
Okay.
Let's measure it. So come in the office, we'll get some measurements done. We have an AI-powered microscope that enables us to look at those different areas of the scalp, quantify exactly what's going on in each area. I even have a microscope that measures hair to hair. So every hair gets numbered in that particular zone. It's serious. And that's
It's a real science. I get it. It's like down to the I don't know what you would call that.
every hair.
Down every single hair.
Every hair
So
is
since
numbered, as they say in the Bible, I think.
well, since we're talking about treatment, so it sounds like we've segued into that, which was my next set of questions was um, you know, with people already experiencing thinning hair, it sounds like you have a full library of treatments. Like, what do you see are the best, or is that a silly question given what you just said, which was it depends on who you are, what you are, where you are, and like all those. But like, if I were just like, I need something today, what do I do? Like, maybe we can talk about like the traditional off the shelf sort of, if I was going and how effective they are, and
Yeah.
then these other deeper treatments that seem to, really target specific things.
Yeah. I mean,
Let us
if
have
we if we think about the world of hair loss, I mean, most people think first like Rogaine. Oh my God, yeah. Why did they think Rogaine? Well, minoxidil was the first FDA approved drug for hair loss, and so
Okay.
at least you're on the right path towards something that has an FDA approval. I'm not saying that's the end all be all, because some people literally cannot metabolize minoxidil out of the bottle in their scalp into minoxidil sulfate, and that's one of the things that we elucidate through genetic testing. People say, "Oh, I tried Rogaine, it didn't work." Well, either it could be that they didn't use it properly. That's possible. That they didn't use it as often as they should have, which is twice a day, every day, but they didn't use enough of it. Maybe they put it 10 drops, they should have used 30. Maybe they put it on their hair, they didn't put it on their scalp by mistake, they didn't understand.
Mhm.
Or maybe they have a different type of hair loss condition that wasn't related to minoxidil, for example, or genetically they're predisposed not to be able to convert minoxidil into minoxidil sulfate. So unfortunately, there's a lot of reasons why minoxidil is kind of like not only the most popular, but also the most frustrating hair loss treatment on the planet. And one of the things that we do oftentimes is prescribe, well, first, after we elucidate what's going on, like what is the actual problem here, history of hair loss in the family, in your situation, what is your medical conditions, what nutritional regimen are you on, how's your sleep wake cycle, do you have inflammation, is there stress, all of these different factors together to what's your scalp health, like if you have a little inflammation on your scalp and you put Rogaine on there, I mean, it could be disastrous and you could be causing more harm than good. Not
Okay.
really because of the minoxidil, but because of the vehicle, the alcohol that the minoxidil is dissolved in. So there's a lot of things that we try to get to in the evaluation process, but I want to just kind of dial back. Okay, you tried minoxidil maybe, and you failed. For whatever reason, it was not your jam.
Right.
And you don't feel like you got a result from it. Well, you've got some options. You can go to a compounded version of minoxidil. You could get an evaluation and get tested to see if minoxidil is the right thing for you. You could get your scalp evaluated to see if there is some scalp health issue. So there's a lot of pathways. You could go to an oral minoxidil. You don't need a prescription for that. You can't just go down to, Walgreens or CVS. And I don't trust these cloud pharmacies, to be honest, because they're just after the, gathering up these consumers in large volumes. I'm not so happy with those folks either. I think it's very poor quality. But we could put you, if you were a patient at Bauman Medical, we put you on a low dose, safe version of oral minoxidil that could stimulate hair growth, but also not create any havoc in terms of side effects or other symptoms. So that's just one basic thing that we can do.
Right, but that's more safe oral than perhaps putting on top of your head, but just as effective.
So what I guess what you're asking is the oral
Taking
more
it
effective than
orally
topical?
versus putting it on
Well,
top of your head. Yeah,
theoretically, if you got the same dose into your body, it would be equal. But that's
it's
not the
going to be
case. What
equal.
we find is that people do better with oral medication because it's simpler. It takes a fraction of the amount of time. You just pop the pill. It doesn't interrupt your hair styling regimen at all. It doesn't
Right.
interrupt your day. It doesn't you barely even think about it. You pop the pill and you're back to brushing your teeth or whatever you're doing that morning. And so people are more consistent with it. It's easier to travel with a bottle of pills than it is a bottle of
Right.
liquid. So there's a
Right.
lot of reasons why oral minoxidil is a big winner. But you have to be careful. Microdose, not overdose. Look out for water retention. Look out for low blood pressure. There are things that we are very careful with. So just don't run out to your, internal medicine doctor or dermatologist and say, "Oh, put me on a split pill of
Right.
minoxidil. I'm off and running." You could have issues. So there are things that we do to figure that out. But
Okay.
that's just one tool in the toolbox that seems to be like on the tip of everyone's tongue because they're thinking roguing, right? Um, one of my favorite at-home treatments is laser light therapy.
Well, I was
And
going to ask you about that. Like, well, you talked to, so that's a home therapy is laser light. Like, and is that red light therapy or
yes,
is it, okay.
so it's
So talk,
visible red. We measure the color by wavelength. So the wavelength of red, 630 to 670, usually 650, those are visible wavelengths, and they impart energy to the hair follicle. How do we do that? Well, they didn't teach us that in medical school 35 years ago. So I'm going to explain to you what they found is the mechanism of action. The photons of light are absorbed at the level of the mitochondria. And this is true for skin as well as hair follicles. And the mitochondria will turn those photons into energy, ATP, which is the energy currency of the body. And remember I said before, hair follicles highly metabolic. So if you provide a little bit more energy there, you're going to get a thicker, stronger, healthier hair. Now, how you apply red light, man, there's a million different ways to get red light. And all you need to do is go on Amazon and look up red light therapy, and you'll see lasers all the way down to LEDs and a lot of garbage in between, Chinese knockoffs and things like that. So medical grade devices in the realm of hair regrowth that you would use at home, that those devices are going to be thousands of dollars. We're talking like $3,000 to $5,000 or more,
oh, wow.
$5,200 on the
Mhm.
top end. And so, as you can imagine, a $5,200 device is vastly different than a $500 device made in China, that looks
Right.
like a bicycle helmet or something like that. So, the Bauman Turbo Laser Cap is my favorite. I mainly because I helped design it based on all the years and years of use of the old laser caps that were originally invented by Dr. Michael Rabin. So, I love the Bauman Turbo Laser Cap. That's my go to device. Portable, rechargeable. It's fast treatment time, 5 minutes a day, and has zero side effects, none.
Oh, wow. Were there side effects in the other laser cap? The doctor, what's his name? He just mentioned, or
Dr. Rabin, no, there's never been a side effect from red light, low level laser light
right.
therapy or photobiomodulation. It's the safest treatment for hair loss that I can imagine. It's a very, very nice way to impart energy to the hair follicles. It just takes a little bit of time. You have to do the treatment typically on a daily basis. So 5 minutes every day with the turbo laser cap is enough to stimulate the hair follicles all the way from the front of your scalp through to the nape of the neck, which is nice.
Is it enough for, I'm just curious because I'm asking, like, if you've had, like, let's say that patch of hair or that it is really thin one part of your hair, that it's going to be as effective as like if you just had thinning, like you mentioned in the front of the crown, like,
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of patients want to know, is this treatment going to work for my type of hair loss, right? And
hmm
so mostly what we're talking about, again, just to refresh, is the androgenetic alopecia problem, which is male and female pattern hair loss, the gradual miniaturization or weakening of the hair follicle. It's
yeah,
not an automatic shutdown like the light bulb goes out and that's it. If the follicle's dead and gone, the only thing that's going to work in that area to give you coverage and regrowth is a hair transplant.
okay,
End of story. So what you need to think about is like your head of hair is like a garden, right? Sometimes you need extra fertilizer, maybe
yeah,
even sunlight and rain potentially. But the point is that if the plants in the garden are dead and gone, and you go to Home Depot and you come back with a bag of fertilizer, you're missing the boat.
Yeah.
You need to go out and buy a bag of seeds, and that's the hair transplant, right? So
Gotcha.
most patients actually need a combination of both. And the reason is because they may already have some loss that has occurred that's irreversible. Maybe it's a small
Mhm.
area, but they also have a huge amount of risk coming up, in the near future, within the next 5 to 10 years, of hair loss that's coming their way that needs to be prevented and addressed ahead of time. And so most patients in the practice are, to be honest, usually need a bit of both, meaning they might need some degree of transplantation, and certainly they need prevention and enhancement therapy over time.
So for women, because I think it's different for a man, like if they came in and they were bald and you were transplanting hair, for women, it might be a little more subtle, meaning like you can have a transplant within your hair and people might not see like the plug or I mean, I don't know a lot about this world. So, um, educate
Yes,
us who are like, oh, I never thought about that.
right. Like, oh, I never thought about a hair transplant because I thought it was pluggy or painful or whatever. And that's a common misconception today. So just so we're all on the same page, hair transplants done today in an artistic way with the right technology are 100% undetectable. You should not see something pluggy or weird looking. Um,
Mm,
that's not to say that every surgeon performs things that way. I mean, we all know plastic surgery can be very obvious in unfortunate cases. But the best plastic surgery, the best cosmetic procedures are the ones that are undetectable and the patient just looks refreshed.
right.
And actually, today that's more common than not in hair transplant. But there's a huge uptick in the number of hair transplants that are being done by non-board certified physicians, people who
Um,
are doing it maybe once a month instead of, 3 times a day, like, a full-time hair surgeon. And that's where the risks lie. But today we can do eyebrow transplantation. We can replace hair into scars if you've had a facelift or a brow lift. We can do eyelash transplantation. So the ability to move and to really align hair follicles into the skin with angle, orientation, position is so much different than it was nearly 30 years ago when I first started in this field. Um, so the point is that, kind of bringing this home, is that for women who have some loss of density, yes, we can transplant in between the hairs that you have, provided there's gaps, right? And especially true for women with a deep receded hairline, maybe because they were just born that way with a high hairline and
right.
they want a more feminine look or more youthful look. It can be done. Or if they've had an exacerbation of that hairline, meaning that it's receded postmenopausally, or they noticed around the time that they started hormone optimization therapy. Maybe they added a little testosterone for all the great benefits, and they've noticed that it's receding. It happens very commonly with pellets. I'm not against testosterone or hormone pelleting, but I do think sometimes physicians overdo those without knowing it, and they run into trouble. And some women are just very, very sensitive and end up needing hair transplants because of it.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, so now it's time. We've held off on this. Let's talk about Ozempic and the GL-1 drugs and the hair loss that you are seeing coming from those. Well, that we've heard about, but I know you've seen this firsthand, so fill us in.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, Ozempic is just the latest weight loss craze. I've been around long enough to see everything from the cookie diet uh,
Oh, yeah.
to, and everything in between. I mean, I think even fen was around when I first got started. So, we're talking about nutritional deprivation, right? Caloric
Mm-hmm.
deficits, because that's the quickest way to really put your body into fat burning mode. But as
Mm-hmm.
we know, the GLP-1 agonists, and it's not the medication itself that causes the hair loss; it's the
Okay.
nutritional deficit. Okay, and I think that's important. At least I should say there's no evidence for the medication itself causing the hair loss. It's the sequela. It's the consequences of the medication, right? So GLP-1 agonists do what? They make you less hungry. They make you less, craving. There's a lot of things that happen. It also decreases your absorption. It decreases your stomach and gut motility. So your absorption goes down. So all of those things kind of slow down the whole digestive tract and make you not really think about food all as much as you did before.
Okay.
Also, what's interesting, and I love to bring this up, is that it also diminishes cravings for other things, such as shopping, by the way. That's an anecdotal report. But a lot of cravings, can be hit from these satiety mechanisms in the body. And there's so many different ones now. It's not just Ozempic, right? GLP-1 agonists, and there's ones that are triple agonists and all these other things combined.
Right.
But anyway, the point is if your body's in a nutritional deficit, it's going to start to burn fat. It's going to start to eat muscle, and it's going to start to degrade bone. And that's what happens to folks who are on these weight loss medications. And when that happens, as we have said before, the nutrients and fuel that are going into the body are decreasing. Your body goes into kind of a crisis mode, and it says, you know what, we got to start going down to the cellar and burn some of that, lumber that's down there. So the junk in the trunk starts to get burned. But the problem is that it doesn't feed the follicle. And so for folks who are sensitive, meaning that they have some hair sensitivity to nutrient and fuel intake, they can start that telogen process. So the shedding occurs usually within about a month or so, and it can be quite severe. If you're losing, let's call it, 2 pounds a week, all of a sudden, in like 6 to 12 weeks, wow, that's quite a bit of weight. And, all of a sudden things are happening, and you're losing hair at the same time. And so as you stay, and this is very common also with bariatric surgery, as I did not mention previously. So things like stomach sleeves and Roux-en-Y, these modifications to the GI tract surgically, balloons, all these things, it caused the same problem. And it was very, very common in my world when I did general surgery to see folks who were losing weight rapidly from their bariatric surgery, their weight loss surgery, to then lose a lot of hair. So we knew this was coming. The question is, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you're continuing to lose weight, your hair follicles are still getting the signal that you're starving, essentially, and they don't tend to produce such good hair, and that shedding process can continue. But hopefully, once you reach a maintenance weight, even while you're losing, you could hopefully fortify the function of the follicles with maybe some extra protein intake, make sure your vitamins are on point, make sure you're absorbing those vitamins. So do your routine blood work. And please continue to work out so you're not losing muscle mass and you're not losing bone. I mean, you don't want to end up being like a fragile, thin, skinny person, like you fall over and break a hip. That would be terrible. So build your muscle, strengthen your bone at the same time. You need to change your lifestyle.
Okay.
That's
Fair enough.
I'll step off the soapbox, but that's my advice.
Well, so one more question about like, what if a woman is wearing a wig or using hair extensions? Does that impact hair follicles as well?
Well, that's a great question. So what we do to our hair, and we talked a little bit about like managing our hair color and curl with chemicals and heat and those types of things. But very oftentimes, certain styles of hair, for example, tight braids for sure can put extra tension on the follicle. I mean, there are ethnic populations that begin braiding hair, at very young ages to the point where it's so tight. The children literally need Tylenol or Motrin to get through the discomfort of having such tight braids. We know that is causing traction alopecia. Traction alopecia means excessive tension on the follicle over time, over and over and over again, over the course of, could be not just hours, but weeks or months or years. And excessive tension could literally pluck the hair right out of the follicle, or that extra tension just causes the follicle to degrade its function. And hair extensions are the most common thing I see in the practice that does this. And it's the longer, the bigger, the more Hollywood the extensions, the more at risk you are. Now, of course, there's different types of attachments, different frequency of how you move them around. All of these different things make a difference, because if you can distribute the weight a little bit more evenly, if you can move the tension around more commonly than just relying on one spot, like a weave, for example, is going to basically glued to the front part of your head consistently, and it has to be removed and then re-glued. I mean, that's going to cause a lot of damage, no question about it. Hair extensions around the sides and the back, again, if you're wearing very large, long, heavy extensions, you're going to cause a problem with the hair follicles in the most permanent area, which eventually you might need those follicles. If you have hair loss someplace else, you need a hair transplant. You're now destroying those follicles because they're under tension.
Oh, wow.
So I would never tell someone not to use hair extensions ever, just like I would never tell anyone not to color their hair if they want to. But let's be mindful of what the risks are, because there's honestly no safe cigarette here. There's really only upside risk,
Mm.
downside risk, and the upside potential is just how great it looks, right? And they're addictive. Don't get me wrong. Hair extensions on women look amazing. You want that Hollywood
Right.
look. You want cheerleader hair. I get it. But let's try to do it maybe less frequently. Let's try to do it only when you need to for a special function, and try to come up with other creative hairstyling. And if you need to wear extensions, please get on some kind of therapy or treatment regimen that's going to be protective to the hair follicle.
And would you say, so dyeing your hair also is going to have an impact on the follicle, obviously, right?
Well, so the chemicals associated with busting open the fiber, right, which is the
Right,
cuticle of the hair, not the follicle, but the cuticle, can weaken the hair fiber. And we spent a little bit of time talking about that
right.
earlier. Um, People that do repetitive perming on their hair, straightening particularly, can actually damage the skin of the scalp over time. And so
Mm.
what it does, it causes a mild chemical burn each time. And anyone who has had, let's say, a strong perm, even a keratin treatment, let's say, if that stuff gets on your head, right, gets literally on your scalp, and you feel it burning your skin, you probably want to let your hairstylist know that that's happening. And you probably want to make some kind of modification and try not to do it again, because a mild burn again and again and again and again and again and again causes a scar at the level of the scalp. And there's certainly certain ethnic populations that do perming from a very young age, and they have problems in the scalp called CCCA. That's a type of scarring alopecia. Central centrifugal cicatricial alopecia is a long word that basically means that you burn the heck out of your scalp, and the follicles are suffering because of it. And they can die permanently. It's very difficult um,
Oh,
to rejuvenate those follicles. Oftentimes they're dead and gone. So over time, you want to be careful.
yeah. Oh, well, good, good. I'm just squeezing all this amazing information. We're doing great. So now I want to ask, beyond products and treatments, what could, we take away, what are some everyday habits that can keep our hair looking, thicker, fuller, amazing?
Yeah. Well, you just got to have perfect health. And so I always tell my personal trainer that if I didn't have a day job, taking care of my health would be so easy. I could just dedicate all the time in the
Right,
world to
right,
it, right?
right.
But, sometimes that doesn't always work. So we've got to try to find those niches of time to help keep our health and wellness on point. Let's get good sleep. Let's stay well nourished. Let's get our stress level under control. Be mindful, right? So those are holistic things. Genetically, we got to choose good parents. Not always so easy to do. So my point is like, understand your genetic risk, and then activate therapies and treatments that are in line with the severity of the situation. So, of course, someone who is in the early stages of some thinning, maybe they don't realize if anything's really happening. Their hair looks pretty good, but their ponytail is thinning. Come in and let's just talk about it. Let's get some measurements. Maybe we don't do anything but just add a vitamin. I mean, maybe we just do something
Right.
simple. A nutraceutical system for hair. Maybe they have a little bit of stress. We got to work on the sleep. We work on the nutrition, and just monitor it and see if that helps. If we can stabilize or improve without medications or other more heroic interventions, great. But let's also be realistic. Someone comes in and they have a deep receded hairline, or they want to lower their hairline. We need to talk about transplantation. And transplants, cost time and money, and it's a big investment for some, but can be life changing. And so if you have an area of a scar that you want to take care of, or, eyebrows that you've overplucked or something like that, let's talk about it. If it's a hairline or receding temples or just a thinning spot that you can see the scalp shining through, there's a lot of things that we can do. And that would go hand in hand with the other non-invasive therapies, like so many great regenerative treatments that we have that we can do in the office, like platelet-rich plasma, exosome therapy, transepidermal delivery of peptides and growth factors. That's called TED. No needles. That's really exciting. We can even bank your own hair follicles. If you think that somewhere down the line you may want a treatment made from your own hair follicles, like your own growth factors, for example, deployed into the scalp, or maybe in 5 or 10 years we'll have hair cloning. I mean, that's the exciting future of hair restoration, and that we're on the cusp of these huge breakthroughs in regenerative medicine. And compared to what we've seen in the past 5 years, it's unbelievable what's going to be coming in the next 5 to 10.
It's exciting if we can only hold on until then.
Absolutely. But you have to start early. And so that's my take home message is that time equals follicles. And what we mean by that is that if you're prone to hair loss, as we started off our conversation, is that this stuff just doesn't get better on its own. Just like everything else in our body and actually in the world, entropy, it just kind of degrades.
Yeah.
So our skin, our brain, our muscles, our bone, or whatever, our bodily functions, we all need a little bit of extra help as we get older. And we enter into this time of our lives where hopefully we have time to enjoy our lifespan, right? And then our
Hmm.
health span. Well, I want to improve your hair span, the time that you spend with your beautiful head of hair. And so if you delay, then you might be leaning more towards more aggressive therapies. So where it's easier to treat, if you're in the earlier stages of loss. And that's where I encourage people to reach out and just get the information that they want,
Yeah. Being
need.
informed always helps, and that gives you choice. If someone was feeling hopeless about their hair loss today, what would be the first steps you would, or what would be like one message you would share with them?
Oh gosh, well don't be hopeless because we've got so many great therapies and treatments, and when applied
Okay.
correctly, they can be truly miraculous. And so we've changed. I've had a blessing of a career to be able to impact 35,000 patients in my practice
Wow.
here in Boca Raton, Florida. I've done over 14,000 hair transplant surgeries, over 14,000 regenerative treatments, including PRP and other things. So I've had a great blessing in life to be able to help people restore their confidence, their feeling of beauty, their self esteem, really to change a bad hair week, month, or year, or a bad hair life into a great hair day and a great
Mm,
hair life. And so it's really truly a blessing. So I would say don't be scared. There is hope. I know there's a lot of noise out there in the world of hair loss and hair restoration. It just seems, and once you start searching for it, the algorithm just dumps it on you. It's awful. But go and search out good information. So at baumanmedical.com, we have literally thousands of pages of information that I've personally written since the 1990s, actually. We have hundreds of hours of video content, educational content about every type of hair loss and treatment that we provide. You
wow.
could ask a question. You could just go to baumanmedical.com/ask and just type in a question, and I will get the answer. My team and I will get the answer back to you. Be sure you leave an email or a phone number so we can get the answer back to you, and don't make sure it's spelled right. And then people often very much start their evaluations from their home or phone. I mean, look, we can't do a digital measurement of your scalp, obviously, from a distance. But what we can do is take this really important inventory of what's going on in your life. We can get some blood work done. We can look at your biomarkers. We can look at your genetics. We can look at your health history, and see through the photos that you provide in the video that we can do even just today on Zoom and your iPhone or Android phone takes great pictures, way better than what we used to be able to get, and really start the process of education. And then hopefully we get a chance to see you here in Boca Raton, Florida, or I have offices also in New York and many other places coming soon around the country.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. So we should check out your website. And I know in the show notes, everybody, I will be putting all those resources. Um, this has been great. Before we wrap up, what are three tips, top tips for women who want to maintain their hair health for years to come? Like, what are your three tips?
Yeah, I think if you want to maintain your head of hair for years to come, the number one thing to do is get informed about what may be affecting your hair. So that's
Okay.
important, the education and information. So that's
Okay.
really important. Number two, get an evaluation. And so we're not talking about the evaluation that you get to your derms where they just look over you and go, oh, it looks pretty good. I think it looks better. I don't know. We should use the same PRP that we did on your skin for your hair. No, don't do any of that. Get
Mhm.
someone who's board certified in hair restoration, a specialist with expertise and credentials to take a look and get an evaluation. And then the third most important thing is take action. Do something. Don't just sit around and be like, oh, well, maybe next year I'll do it. Because as we say, time equals follicles. So
Mm.
education and information, get an evaluation from a credentialed person, medical professional, and then take action on it.
Well, those are great tips. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bauman. This has been, I feel so educated already, and I look forward to going to your website and checking out the videos and all of that stuff. And I will put, like I said, that all goes in the show notes. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been so enriching.
Oh, thanks, Rita. Thanks for having me. And if you do receive any questions from your audience, I'm happy to come back on and answer those, or we can work out something perhaps even on social media, get the questions back out to those folks and so forth. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Thank you so much. That was so great. Fascinating. I learned a lot. And if you would like to check out more on Dr. Bauman and check out the couple of educational videos he's posted on his website, please check him out. The website link is in the show notes. And that is it. Join us next week where I am going to get into travel tips, then thinking travel tips for your summer by sharing some of my recent trip to Spain. And remember that the key, and probably the only key to unlocking the door of the weight struggle, is inside you. So keep listening and find it. I will see you here next week. Thanks for listening to the Thin Thinking Podcast. Did that episode go by way too fast for you? If so, and you want to dive deeper into the mindset of long-term weight release, head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com, where you'll find numerous tools and resources to help you unlock your mind for permanent weight release, tips, strategies, and more. And be sure to check the show notes to learn more about my book, From Fat to Thin Thinking, Unlock Your Mind for Permanent Weight Loss, and to learn how to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode.